Research in Science. On behalf of IQAC of Atmaram Sanatantham College, I welcome today's speaker, Dr. Gayatri Vishkarma, Head, Department of Biostatistics, Indian Spinal Injury Center, New Delhi. We are really honored, ma'am, that you took out your valuable time for us. Dr. Gayatri Vishkarma is an experienced biostatistician having 13 years of post-PhD work experience in academics and research. She has got PhD in statistics from Jabalpur University and postdoctoral training from University in Canada. Dr. Gayatri is currently working with Indian Spinal Injury Center as head biostatistics. She worked as biostatistician with Department of Research at RGCIRC, New Delhi. She worked as visiting scientist at University of Texas, USA. She started her career as assistant statistician in JN Agriculture University, Jabalpur, moving on to teaching statistics and SAS programming at Amity University, Noida. She has also worked as monitoring and evaluation specialist in Woodward Charitable Foundation, Ethiopia. She has been involved in analyzing and reporting clinical trial data at Clinical Development Service Agency, CDSA, Faridabad. In addition, Dr. Gayatri has also been active in the statistical research community with a primary focus on sample size calculation, survival analysis, and meta-analysis. She has organized many workshops on various popular topics such as sample size determination, data analysis, research methodology, and good clinical practice. She has 25 research publication in peer-reviewed journals. I welcome you again, ma'am, and invite you to speak on patterns of research in science.
Thank you, Dr. Anita, for giving me this opportunity. It's nice that I have been part, and in last webinar was also on research methodology, where I talked about, basic overview. If some of you have already attended, you might get some idea. So I will start. If everybody can see the screen, I can start.
Yeah, yes, yeah, screen is visible. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So my today's topic, which has been allotted to me, is pattern of research in science. So when we talk about research, I think you must have already attended 2 sessions. The speakers already talked about the research in different fields like social sciences and other. So what we are focusing here on the sciences, like how we have to and what are the patterns of research in sciences. So let's start with the first question. What is research? People generally get confused with the search and research. What is the difference between search and research? Search means the searching something from the available resources. Whatever you have, let's say you have a Google search and you are trying to find out something out of it. So it's available material. If you're searching something from the available material, that is search. And research is not the searching again. It's like you are trying to find out something different, which is not at all available in the literature, which is truly novel. So that is the research. Now, if you ask what is research, it depends on whom you are asking. Okay, everybody will give a different answer, because research is a vast area where and it is used everywhere in every field. Okay, so if you will likely to get very different answers from different people, let me give you one example. If television news channel, they supposed to conduct a research, okay, and what they want to do, they will form a viewer polls on the topic of public interest, or maybe the election, forthcoming election, or something like that? Will be a research? Or a graduate student working on a research project with the professor, and just only his understanding will be collecting data and analyzing the data? Or maybe a business consultant, they are trying to do some research on potential solution on organizational problem, specific in particular specific area, they identify some problem. So will they these are the research or what? So now here, as we are talking about the research in science, so there are two things. If you say it is a scientific research, it contributes to a body of sciences. First thing, there should be a science involved in it, and it follows the scientific method. If you are just only going and collecting data and saying this is my research, this will not be called as a scientific research. Okay, so this is the main theory behind the scientific research. There are two pillars of sciences, theory and observation. So all the cycle, just if you can see in this picture, it rounds here and there. Theory, then if you have a theory, you will deduce it and test some hypothesis whether this theory is applicable to your setup, your population, your study population. You'll collect some observation and then test it. Okay, now if you have some observation and you want to develop a theory out of it, that will be called as a generalization of the observation. Let's say I have observed in 10 people. Maybe you can take the example of COVID-19. When we first got the case, it might be people were maybe misunderstood with the flu or pneumonia. Later on, as the cases increases, they have got a lot of observation and they started doing something. And after collecting lot of observation, they generalize this theory that this is the new outbreak, pandemic outbreak, and this becomes a theory. It's still there is a lot of scientific research needs to be there to understand or generalize this theory. Okay, so these are the two pillars. Now if we see in research, what is our main outcome? When we do a research, the main outcome is to how we are disseminating this research, whatever outcome we have got, through the publication. Either it is a simple report, or it is a manuscript or article which you are publishing in a journal, or news article, or blogs, or whatever way you want to disseminate it. Okay, now what I found this data from Clinical Trial Agency, which is saying that number of registered trial, there is a huge difference between the number of registered trial than it got published. If you can see this arrow, red arrow at the end in 2017, it's around 80% people are not able to publish it, their research. And we are trying to find out what is the problem exactly, where we are lacking behind, that we try to start our research. What are the problems we are getting so that we are not able to disseminate it to the people who need it, maybe to the society or the scientific community? What are the different problems? And what I found that there is a main problem is methodology. That's how we are here to understand the research methodology. Okay, so if you have a good knowledge and how you have to proceed for each and every step in methodology in your research will be completely a scientific research, and definitely you will be able to publish it in a reputed journal. So this huge gap we have to reduce, and that's how we are here to understand. Now, what is scientific research? So scientific research is that requires only two skills, as we have seen in that last figure, theoretical and methodological, observational. Okay, now theoretical means know what is this, you have to get the understanding of this. What considerably it is harder to master, and it requires years of observation and reflections. It requires skills that cannot be taught. For theoretical kind of scientific research, if you want to develop a theory, universal theory, which will be generalized throughout the community, you can say, or globe, but rather it cannot be taught, but it can be experienced. You can take the example of Galileo, Newton, Einstein. They were master theoreticians. Okay, so they took number of years and they used their own experience in developing theory. Einstein developed, you know, how much time Einstein took to develop the theory of relativity? He took around 10 years. And what about the Newton? For Newton principles, he observed the thing, he was developed the theory, but nobody is going to believe it until unless he has some experiences, skills, and observation to validate it. And Newton took around 20 years, you know, to develop the theory, and people can realize or they can accept this theory. Now, second thing is methodological, which is know how we have to do it. This is the another pillar, and that is relatively standard, invariant across the disciplines, and easy acquired through the doctoral programs. So methodological, which like this is the program where we are trying to learn all the methodology, how to conduct a robust research so that we can help to the society as well as we can help ourselves to get some publication. So they are both, you know, mutual understanding of this. Now, what is research? So scientific research, if we say, so research patterns are if you have a solution and it is reusable, that is commonly occurring with the problem. If that solution can be applied again and again, that is one of the pattern of the research. Research process is a lot more formulaic than it might appear. Okay, now if you see this pattern, now you can see different dimension here. Just looking at this pattern, it finds that applying particular formulaic approach tend to work fairly well for identifying important problems. In fact, I would pose that there are research patterns similar to the different software designing as well. So these type of, like, if you have different designs and pattern, you can apply in different dimension. So in that sense, you have to understand the science pattern and you can apply it, and you can see that here patterns start with finding a problem. This is the first main important thing. You have to have a problem to work on for the research, right? This is the main thing. If you don't have any problem that you are not seeing, there is no requirement of doing any research. And after that, if you have got the right problem to work on, then you have to find out the solution. Okay, how to solve this problem. So there are only two patterns which we, and there are huge material to understand what are the different steps where we can do this. I think different participants, they are trying to ask something. We will take some questions later on. So what you can do, you can write on your paper, and later on after completing this, we will address your questions. So now identifying the problem, that is very important for your research. So if you have a question in your mind that I can do the research on this topic, you have to define it properly. There are some criteria for this. Okay, and Charles Kettering already said that a problem well stated is half solved. So in like taking this quote as a ideal thing, I would suggest not asking this type of questions. Okay, in this figure you are saying, if you are seeing that a person is asking the another person who is going to be like buried here, his head is going to cut, and he is asking, after cutting your head, whether I should put in a plastic bag or paper bag. It's not relevant, you know. So this type of things, this is just for the lighter side. You have to understand that it is very important to define and identify and justify, you know, you have to justify why you want to conduct this research. So there are some criterion based on the different fields. There's one criteria which is known as PCOTS. PCOTS means, P means population, I means intervention, C means comparison or comparator group, O means outcome, T means time point, and S for study design. So I'm repeating it again. It says, guideline says, if you are defining your research question, if you are writing a grant, you know, grant writing, or you are doing something else, your research question has to be well defined in a particular format. So there are guidelines for this. So I am repeating again, what is PCOTS? It's P means population, I means intervention, C means comparator group if you have any, O means outcome variable, and T means time points, and S means study design. So if all you are including in your research question, anybody is reading, they can well understand and they can say that it is well designed. Okay, especially the grant agencies. The second criteria is FINER, which is commonly used by all other study designs. I forgot to tell you, PCOTS PCOTS criteria is used for the experimental studies only, especially the clinical trials and all. But FINER is applicable everywhere. Whatever kind of study you are doing, it's a lab study or it's a survey study, you have to fit your research question in this criteria. Now, what is FINER? FINER is, FINE means feasibility, I means interesting, N means novel, and E means ethical, and R means relevant. So your research question has to be feasible so that you can conduct this. I cannot say that I want to conduct a survey on quality of life of COVID patient. In this time, it is not feasible because you can get infection. You cannot go and ask patient that how are you feeling, whether and like before and after the COVID, whether your lifestyle or quality of life has gone deteriorated or what. So the research question has to be feasible. In this time of this COVID outbreak, I cannot conduct a study like this. Okay. So second thing is interesting. So it has to be interesting. Definitely COVID-19 is a very interesting topic nowadays, but you have to think on how can I work and what are the area where already it is not only that how many people are there and out of them how many males and females, and age is already proven that above 60 people die. So it has to be something interesting which is not like done earlier. It's related with the novel also, like it has to be unique like you know, it is not published, it is not discussed anywhere else. Second, the next thing is ethical. When you are conducting any scientific research, you have to go through the ethics committee and they will ask why you are doing. It's okay that you want to do something with this research question, but if you are involving human subjects or some other thing, if you want to work on whether it is ethical or not, that has to be taken care of. You have to justify that ethically it is good and it is good for the subjects I am working on, and it is good for the society as well. So you have to justify to that community. Then next come to the relevant. It has to be relevant. Just like if you see this paper, this picture here, it it has to be relevance to the population. Why you want to do scope of the study, here you have to search. So what you can do, you have to design, let's say one research question has come into your mind, then you have to do a literature search to refine it. You have to search whether it is feasible through your resources, whatever resources is available with you, whether it is doable or not, then it is interesting or not and novel or not. For these two things, you have to ask the experts, your seniors, your experts, subject experts, and then you have to do a good literature search that already this kind of research or published or available in the literature or not. If maybe they have done something else, but you can mold your research question in different direction. So that gives you a lot of confidence when you do the literature search. And good literature search is also very important in scientific research. Now let us take some example to understand what is the difference between research question and research objective. Now here you can see, if I want to do some, I have come with the research question which is saying, why have organizations introduced team briefing? Okay, so this is a team briefing is a scheme which an organization is trying to put on the employees, and I'm thinking why. Okay, so this is my question, why. Now if I have to convert this into the research objective, because you know research objective and research questions are has to be well defined. If you are writing especially the grant application, if you are not clear about the what is the difference between research question, objectives, aims separately, because aims and objectives are the different thing. Aims are the broad thing and objectives are very specific. So we will try to understand how they are moving. So objective is some directional way, you are directing something to do, how we will do it. And research question is the simple statement or interrogative statement question. Okay, so if there is a scheme, so I have to state my objective to identify organization's objective for team briefing scheme. Now, the second question is, how can the effectiveness of the team briefing scheme be measured? One thing, if, okay, this is the scheme, but how it can be measured? Like, let's say, I'll say performance. How can we measure the performance? There are different criteria to measure the performance. We can say, let's say, my physical performance. How much time I can run on treadmill, or for how many minutes I can do the yoga, or how difficult position I can do. How we are going to measure it, right? So, okay, this is the scheme, but how we are going to measure it? So for this, objective has to be written like this: to establish suitable effectiveness criteria for team briefing scheme. Next is, has team briefing scheme been effective? So after doing, so you can see that first thing will start with, okay, why this is the scheme, then how we will measure it. So these are the different research questions. You know, it can be done in one study, it can be done in separate studies. So, but it has to be in order. Once we will be able to answer why it is important, then we have to do the second step, that how it is important, how it can be achieved. Then after that, okay, it is achieved, whether it is effective or not. So has team briefing been effective? This scheme is effective. So for this, your objective must be to describe the extent to which effectiveness criteria for team briefing has been met. So this impact, you have to see this before and after, or whatever you want to do. After seeing the effectiveness, how can the effectiveness of the team be explained to the people like it is effective? So for this, you can write your objective to determine the factors associated with the effectiveness criteria for team briefing, or to estimate whether some of these factors are more influential than the other factors. Okay, so now we have understood that first one scheme has come, then we have seen that how we can measure it, then if it can be measured, whether it is good or not, how effective it is, then if it is effective, what are the factors affecting it. So this will be a complete research. You know, it can be the fourth part, as I told you, or it can be a big project. So let's say different example from medical field. So my broad area is cardiology, and my research topic will be the little focus than the big topic. It is IHD. Now my aim will be to contribute to prevention of IHD. So I want to contribute something through my research to prevent IHD. Now my research question is, does a particular agent A decreases the risk of MI? I am working on particular one. So this can be one of the topic of PhD or any research where you can achieve it in a 2 or 3 years. Now you have to have few objectives, primary and secondary. Always remember that sample size is calculated based on the primary objective. So you have to write accordingly, and you have to, I think everybody must have primary and secondary objective. You have to well define in your grant application. And it is like first focus is your to determine the effect of reducing LDL on the occurrence of MI. And with this objective, because when we do research, we collect a lot of information. Definitely sidewise we want to search something else. This is my main focus, to determine the effect of reducing LDL. But with this, I want to describe the side effects of the lowering. Maybe there might be some side effect also if we are reducing the LDL. So hypothesis will be the risk of MI among the patient treated with this particular agent is lower than the risk among the patient not treated with this agent. Okay, so these are the ways where in that sense you have to write your, either it is the synopsis or your protocol or your thesis or grant application. If you are writing in detail, you're getting approved, your grant is being increased. Now here is one example where you can understand the difference between objective, hypothesis and research question, and how it is moving from general to the specific question. Okay, so general topic to the specific. So my general topic is, let's say, distance learning. Then my hypothesis means your assumption, what you are assuming after observing few things. Okay, now you want to confirm that by conducting this research. Now hypothesis, lack of students in distance classes. So to understand this, in distance learning, lack of students in distance classes, what will be my approach, how to do it? So that is your objective. To determine the reason why students do not attend the distance education in a particular community. Now my research question will be, which is totally specific, we should be gone through the Finer and Peacock criteria. Does use of online resources deter the students from the enrolling distance education? So here I have comparator group, online versus distance education. You know, there are two different units of totally different education. Distance learning means correspondence. Earlier this has to be very popular, but now after coming this online resources, YouTubes and edX and Coursera online, and now the Zoom kind of webinars, people are not preferring distance education. Okay, so this has to be very specific. So that this is one of the example from very broad topic to your particular thing, how you have to define it. Now this is thumb rule for stating your objectives. Your objective has to be clearly phrased in operational term. This is very important. Use action verbs here. to determine, to compare, to verify, to describe, to establish, to calculate. So you have to write in action verbs and avoid these verbs because these are very easily used verbs which there should not be uh, too appropriate to understand, to study. These are the very broad things and has not be, you can have this like in your aims, okay, but not objectives. Objective has to be very specific, as we already seen here. Objective has to be very specific. So you have to avoid using to study and to understand. You have to use the action verbs, okay, to determine, to compare, to calculate, whatever, or to find the, establish the relationship or association. So exactly when you are writing your objective, I am repeating again, if you are writing a grant application, your chances of getting success will increase. Now, literature search, it is very important and you have to be very careful from where you are getting data. One thing is plagiarism. Another thing is what information you are taking, whether it is authenticated or not. So you have to collect the information from authenticated sources. Just for the lighter side, if you see this picture, a student has to work on a project and what he's arguing with the teacher, what do you mean by the facts are wrong? I copied everything straight from the internet. So you have to be very careful about doing this, just copying and pasting through the internet, because internet is there. It's a garbage, or you can say it's a big mess, but you have to go and dive there and find out the good things out of it. So how you have to do, there is a one total different session when I conduct workshop on research methodology. I take only 1 hour session on this research because this is very important for the research. I have just only 2-3 slides to give you some glimpse that what are the main precautions you have to take. First thing is make a list of data sets such as ResearchGate, PubMed, Cochrane Library, whatever the authenticated resources are there in your field that you have, like Scopus and other. From there you have to search. Okay. Now pick keywords carefully and you can use the wildcard like asterisk sign and question mark. Find the mesh term of your keywords. Mesh term means it is the synonym words, because maybe you are saying something and somebody else is writing something else and they have published, and then you might miss that term and publication. For example, for cancer, it's malignancy or some other thing. So that you have to term all the synonym related to your word and then you have to write. Or then when you are doing literature search, you have to use Boolean operators. Exactly, because when you are searching, you can get numbers of million numbers of researches, which is not of your use, and it will be difficult for you to again sort it out what is to be used and what is not of use. So you have to use and, or, and this word specifically you don't want because many people have done the research in this criteria. Okay, so now when you are using wildcard, so what is the meaning of wildcard? When you are using asterisk or the question mark, it allows you to retrieve reference containing variations or in the all search items. If you are using asterisk sign, let's say for example interact, you have, it will search all words related to that, like interact, interacting, interaction, interactivity, whatever the other researchers might have used in their publication, it will search all kind of. That is a good thing. And when you are using question mark, if you are confused with the spelling variation, because you know the English British English and American English has some problem with the spellings. Okay, so behavior, color, these are the different, have different spelling. So what you have to do, you have to use a question mark in between. Okay, so it will search all kind of spellings, whatever is there. So Now, next is when you are done with your research question. I told you again and repeating again, the defining research question is very important. This is like something you are opening somebody's mind. If I am the reviewer, because I generally review some like SERB, Scientific Review Committee Board, I review some project proposal there. What happened? When you are writing a research question and it is like fulfilling all the criteria of VP course or final, people got interest and they will read. They will read. You are forcing them to read your full project proposal before taking any decision. Okay, so research question, then you have to do the literature search for the novelty. So this is the whole combined one thing. Refining your research question, defining your research question using the literature search. Then second comes study design. You have to well define your study design, how you are going to conduct your research. Okay, so whether you are doing an experimental study or it is an observational study. So experimental study is also known as interventional study. So what is the difference between interventional and observational studies? Intervention, where you are giving some intervention to the subjects or animals, or you are working on a wetland. So one, let's say you have a comparative group, control, and some experimental group. So you are giving some experiment, then observing it, how it is working. Similarly, observational study means you are not at all touching anyone, either animal or the study subjects or human population, and you are observing as it is, whatever condition they are in. You are just observing and making your conclusions. Now, one thing comes whether teaching is intervention or not. Yes, definitely, teaching is an intervention study. If I will say I want to conduct a study after this much of webinars, if you have attended during this period, lockdown period, how many workshops, and before that before starting all webinars, I have given you one questionnaire to fill, and after completing all the, like, whether you are well versed with the research methodology or not, to understand. So this will be an interventional study because we are intervening your mind. Okay, so this is teaching is the interventional study. Now, what is the difference between longitudinal and cross-section study? It is difference is the time. You know, longitudinal, it's very clear that if you are doing any study for the longer duration, it will be a longitudinal study. Okay, so, and cross-sectional, that means one time point study. So cross-sectional, that means survey kind of. I'm going and asking you, how are you doing and what are the things. So this is cross-sectional. So cross-sectional, you can say it is a survey study. Longitudinal, we say if you are following some study for more than 2 years. And what is the difference between prospective and retrospective studies? Prospective means you are going from the current time to the future and you are following some pattern with the observations. Okay, and retrospective, that means you have to work on either on the secondary data, or you have to ask patient or the subjects that what happened in the past so that you have achieved this like this disease. Maybe the COVID, those who got the positive, whom they are going to contact, like they were going for just only for the grocery or the vegetables and fruits, or they were going for the work. So we can do that retrospective study. That means already something happened and then you are going back and asking. That is known as retrospective. Prospective means they don't have this disease and we are following, let's say, one particular community. We started those who are not COVID positive, but we are following them for future, that wherever, what are the different factors they are having, and prospect future, like it's in a future way, we are looking for the 3 months or 6 months, how many are getting this COVID after the exposure. So these are the prospective, and this can be experimental. Like prospective studies only can be experimental, otherwise retrospectives are only observational studies. Now, randomized and non-randomized, if you are using randomization is a one term in experimental study, This is known as randomized, otherwise it is non-randomized, because sometimes it is difficult to randomize people if you are not getting. Ethical committee will not permit. If person is doing some research that this particular medicine of Ayurveda is good for preventing the COVID-19, and you are saying I will give half of the people this medicine and I will not give half of the people, ethics committee will not allow you to do this study. Why you are like refraining these people not getting this medicine? So this you have to justify, though sometimes you don't have choice to do always the randomized study. So it depends. For surgery, like in our hospital we have a spine surgery unit. There we cannot randomize. We cannot say that, okay, first patient comes, you will go for the surgery and you will not go for the surgery. No, this is a choice. So here we have to do non-randomized study, that people are coming and then we have to ask, say the consent, and then we will take the observation and conduct the research. Okay. So it depends on the subject's criteria. Now, blinded versus open label, it is also a term of experimental study. Open label means you are telling every subject that you are going to get what kind of medicine or intervention, whatever intervention it is. Okay. Now, blinded means nobody knows, because there is a psychological factor comes into the picture. When, let's say I'm trying one homeopathy medicine and one Ayurvedic medicine, Giloy. I want to do a clinical trial whether in for this, in this COVID, to overcome with this COVID-19, to prevent this disease, I'm giving half of the people what, Giloy, a liquid, or half of them are liquid, the same kind of, in containing same kind of container, homeopathic liquid. Okay, I want to do this. If I am not disclosing this, that which medicine you are getting to the patient, whether it is Ayurvedic or homeopathic, there could be some psychological, impact on this. If I will tell that which one you are getting, people might start thinking, okay, homeopathic takes a lot of time and something like, and it will not work. So psychological factors are nowadays very important in experimental studies. So what you have to do, you have to see design. But sometimes, when you are comparing, it is important to blind this. So blinded study, that means neither the investigator nor the patient. So there are different kind of blinding, one single blinding, double blinding, or and so on. So I'm not going into that detail, but if patient and doctor both are not known, there is some randomization scheme through which they are getting the medicine through their subject. So there is a lot of technical things involved in blinded trials. So that they want to assess the true effect of that medicine. But sometimes, as I told you, in surgery, it is not possible to tell that you are going to get the robotic surgery or the human surgery through the doctors. So it is open label. You have to tell them, because it's like they get to know that, okay, what kind of surgeries we are going to get it. So it depends on their study, subject. Now, here one thing comes, that sampling and randomization. People generally get confused with the sampling and randomization. They think that both are the same things. Okay, but there is a difference between the sampling and randomization, and both the techniques are very important to understand. Now, random sampling occurs when subjects are being selected for the study. We have some population and we are selecting few. So this is sampling. There are different methods for sampling, like probability sampling, again non-probability sampling. Sometimes it is not feasible to get the probability and apply the probability sampling, and you have to use convenience sampling or snowball sampling, some other type of. But if you want to really generalize your results to all, you have to use probability sampling. Okay, and what probability sampling does, then it is also known as random sampling. Subjects in the population is equally likely to be selected, and sample will be representative of that population. if your sample will be representative of the population, then only you can generalize it. And it cannot be achieved through the non-probability sampling. So you have to understand that the difference. But it is not always that you have to conduct. It depends on the subject as well, wherever it is applicable and feasible. Now, randomization occurs only in experimental studies. And now I am emphasizing only in experimental studies. But randomization can be applied, sampling can be applied in observational and experimental studies both. Now, because both techniques objective differs, like what they gives you, that is different. Here we are trying to understand the difference between sampling method, sampling technology, and randomization. Now, randomization means you are assigning some patients or animals to various treatments, either treatment A, treatment B, or treatment C. Okay, so what randomization does, any observed effect can be attributed to the treatment, and hence it may cause causal conclusion. So one thing, if you are applying sampling techniques, you will be able to generalize the results. But when you apply the randomization, because it is restricted, what you can do, you can end up with the causal conclusions, which is also important in medical research. Let's understand this, the difference between sampling and randomization through one example. Suppose an ophthalmologist want to conduct a study evaluating whether people read serif font or sans serif. These are the two different types of fonts when you write and read, and Word or like whatever package you are using for writing. So whether you can read serif or sans serif fonts easier or faster from the distance, particular distance, he want to measure it. This can be read easily. So here you can see in this picture what is the difference between serif and sans serif, because serif fonts has some lines on it here, but sans serif is just like Arial kind of. Okay, so what you will do, ideally you will randomly select some subjects for the study, then you will randomly assign half of the people to serif fonts and half of the people to sans serif font. So first thing what you are doing, randomly selecting some subjects. So in first step what you have done, sampling. The second term, randomly assign half of the patient. Let's say I have selected 50 patients or 50 subjects, not patients. So 50 subjects, I will take 25 and 25. So 25 will be going in which arm or which side, serif font, and 50 will go, and there we will use some randomization schedule, like random number. Through random number we'll not say that 1 2 3 4 5 will come here and rest will go there, no, like this. So sampling happens first and then assignment. So you are getting this, like sampling has to be first and second is randomization. Okay, so why sampling and randomization? Because sampling allows you to obtain a sample representative of the population, and if it will be representative of the population, you can generalize your result for the total population. Okay, because we cannot conduct any research on the census, it's census. Okay, we generally take a sample and talk about or infer about the population. Similarly, randomization allows you to make sure that only difference between the treatment arm is what we are studying. Only we are interested in whether this treatment is effective or not. A versus B, Ayurveda versus homeopathy, right? Whether which one is effective. We are not generalizing it. We are just studying causality to infer about these two drugs. We are not interested in this population. Later on, we have to work to generalize it. Now, in summary, just to understand sampling and randomization, if you are using both, so see the first cell, this one. If you are using both sampling as well as randomization, this will be one of the best study you have designed. But you know, sometimes it is difficult because you will get the causal conclusion as well as you can generalize to the population. But in hospital setup, if I am working in a hospital and doing some research, so So I am limited to the hospital only. I am not going to the community and collecting the subjects, you know. So it is restricted at one place. Those who are coming to my hospital, I am only randomizing them. So it will be only randomization here, not the sampling. Sampling for this, we have to have random sampling technique to select the subject from the sampling frame. Okay, so in hospital setup, we cannot do the sampling, but community level studies, you have to do, you can do this. So no random sampling and randomization we generally do in hospitals. So we give causal conclusion. This happened because of this. We can give the reason only for the samples, not for the, we cannot generalize it for the population. Now, if you are not using sampling and no random, you are using only sampling, no randomization. So you cannot draw some conclusion that this is happening because of this. Causal has not to be there, but you can generalize it to the whole population. And the last one is when you are not using random sampling and you are not using randomization, this is the worst case. This will not be called as a scientific research. So please be aware that either you have to use the sampling technique or the randomization when you are doing, how you are selecting this. You have to mention it. So at the end, I will just say randomization if you are using, you will get the causal relationship. If you are not using randomization, you will just end up with the correlation, which is not causation, which is different than. But if you are using only sampling technique, you can generalize the results. If you are not using sampling, that you cannot generalize the results, whatever. Now next come when we have defined our research question. Okay, then what we have done, we have do the literature search, whether it is interesting and ethical or not. Then third thing, what we have defined the study design, how we are going to collect the data. It is a longitudinal or one time point study. It is an experimental study or whatever, like it's blinded, open label, prospective, retrospective, each and everything you have to write. Then you have to, like, you have defined something. Now next come the very important part of your research is collecting data. Data collection method. So whole package, it is known as data management. Okay, so data management includes your sample size calculation, your data collection methods, how you are going to report your data, how you are going to collect, how you are going to manage it, clean it, and how you are going to analyze which by using which software. So it tells you the whether you are collecting data through the questionnaire or you have some inbuilt data sets like genetics, you know, you have different data sets to work on, or you are doing some interview, or you are just observing it. So you are not doing interview, you are going in a community and observing them and writing. So how you are collecting, this is very important to write your data collection part, data management part. Like people might be aware that there is a compulsory thing that you have to write a statistical analysis part, right? In your grant writing application or your thesis or whatever research you are doing. Nowadays, it is also mandatory. Similarly, just like you are writing statistical, how you are going to perform your statistical analysis, it is mandatory nowadays that you have to define your data management plan in a paragraph or two. Okay, so you have to write how you are going to collect data, what are the methods, and what are the variables you are collecting, in which way you are collecting each and every your outcome variable, your exposure variable, whatever information you are collecting, that has to be defined properly. So let's understand the data because it is very important, and this slide will give you a lot of leverage in upcoming webinars because they are based on the statistical methods. If you understand the this different type of data, it will help you to identify what are the statistical method which is good for your you know, research, or what are the statistical method which is appropriate for your research. So you have to understand, it is very important. So data, why I am emphasizing this is data, not because I am a statistician, I worship data, because this is my, data means if you separate it, DA and TA, it is giving me DA and TA, DA and TA, everybody gets this, dearness allowance and travel allowance. So data, we worship it. Okay, but it is very important for any research. If you are not having a cleaned and mature data for your research, and that is the India is lacking behind. We have very good talent within us. We have the patient pool, we have the subjects, we have different climates, and lot of resources are available with us. What we are lacking behind, recording data properly. Okay, so that is very important, that how you and understanding, to develop understanding about the data. So let's talk about what kind of data you collect. So generally it is the old theory that we collect data in two ways. One is quantitative, another is qualitative. Okay, so quantitative, what is the difference between quantitative and qualitative? Quantitative means which you can quantify by some unit, measurement unit, and qualitative, which you cannot measure with some unit. Okay, so you can say that quantitative is the numerical variable because it can represent in the numeric numbers, and qualitative because we cannot measure it, but these are very important to assess, like psychological or behavioral. So what we have to do, we have to categorize them. Like pain, we cannot measure in units, like how much pain you have, 5 kg or 10 kg, we cannot measure, but it is very important in our hospital. So what we have to do, we have to categorize is whether you have mild, moderate or severe pain. Okay, so let's understand the difference. So quantitative, these are the numerical variable made up of numbers like age, weight, number of children and shoe sizes. Categorical, it is made of words, eye color, gender, blood group and ethnicity. Okay, there are again subtypes of categorical and numeric variables. So what are the difference? Categorical, let's say numerical variable, continuous and discrete. People have already known about these things, but there is a major difference which you have to understand. Discrete means count number, and continuous means it's a continuous number. Infinite options are available here. Let's say I am a statistician, somebody has given me one variable x with the numbers 1 2 3 4 5, right? So 1 2 3 4 5, if you are not defining as an investigator which type of variable it is, it will be difficult for me to understand which statistical test has to be applied. So if I am saying x is, if you are saying x is a discrete variable, that means between 1 and 2 there cannot be any other observation come. It is a finite integer, okay, number of students. We cannot say 2.5. Similarly, if I am saying x is a continuous variable, that means between 1 and 2 observation, there could be infinite numbers can come, like age, you can write in decimal points and all. Similarly, with the ordinal and nominal variables, ordinal means if you are categorizing a variable, it is related with the order. You have to strictly follow some order. Okay. So like pain severity, you have to write mild, moderate, severe. You cannot write haphazardly, either ascending or descending order. Okay. Satisfaction rate. So nominal means yes and no types, blood groups, eye color, where there is no requirement of the nominal. So you understand the difference, because it is very important in the next upcoming webinars to identify the statistical method which is applicable, because when you are doing descriptive statistical method, which graph you have to plot, which is descriptive statistical method, all depends on this categorical, this type of data. Okay, now you have, when you are writing in your protocol, whatever data you are collecting, you have to emphasize what information you are writing in, which way you are going to collect. Let's say I have a question about the coffee drinking. Okay, if it is a qualitative variable, I am just it will be open-ended. Anybody can write anything. Okay, descriptive information, I drink coffee every day, so I am interested just only whether I am drinking, whether you are drinking coffee or not. So it can be very descriptive, qualitative study. But quantitative, that too depends on observational and experimental study. So you can see the discrete. Here I am asking how many cups of coffees you drink every day. So you have to specify. So this will be a discrete, you know, discrete. That means 4 cups of coffee, 5 cups of coffee, something like this. You cannot write 2.5 here. Now in continuous, it is an experimental study because maybe coffee is causing some disease or it is curing some disease. So I want to measure exact amounts. So I want to ask exact amount of the coffee you drink every day, 80 grams, 20 grams or whatever. Okay, so you have to specify, especially if you are working on human or health, you have to, you are just mentioning the smoking is one of the variable which we are interested in. No, you have to give exact information how you are going to measure it. It is a discrete variable, it is a continuous, because smoking you can ask mild mode, current smoker, ex-smoker, and the non-smokers. But you can also ask how many cigarettes you smoke per day. So this will be a descriptive kind of. So everything is very important. Now data management, you have to be very careful what data it needs to manage, what data are important, how much data, because sometimes it happens that a lot of information we collect and later on at the end we puzzle and we end up with the publishing. You remember the first graph which I showed? We started research, collected bunch of information which is not useful for me and puzzled and stopped my research, and that's how we don't end up with the publications. Okay, so you have to very careful that what are the important data which so that's how data management plan comes. You have to define each and everything in your case report form or your questionnaire, that these are the information and how I am going, either I am going to collect from the labs or we are going to ask from the people, or it is collected through the some observation or from the secondary data, you know, some hospital records or somewhere else you can collect it. And there are some principles of data collection. This is very important, and if you are research, especially if you are in the scientific research, I will suggest you to read this paper, 10 simple rules for creating a good data management plan. That will help you. Okay, I am not describing because it will take another 2 hours to describing all the principles. They have 10 simple rules, but you should read and come up if you have some problem. So read this paper. You can take this reference from here. Now statistical method, they are of 2 types, descriptive and inferential. Descriptive, where you are describing everything, that means you are not drawing any conclusion. And second thing, when you are involved with the hypothesis testing and you are drawing conclusion about the population. So it comes from, you know, starting from, so these are also scientific tools, scientific patterns which you have to involve. What kind of study? It is a descriptive study or inferential? For inferential, definitely you need more than one thing to compare, either sample from the population or something. Okay, so there are different methods which you have come across: test of proportion, test of two proportions, test of means, or regression analysis, chi-square test of independence. So all things depends on the type of data. I am emphasizing again and again, if you understood, well understood type of data, all 4 kind of nominal, ordinal, discrete and continuous, you will be able to identify which statistical method is inferential or the you know, descriptive, and which you have to apply. Even I am repeating again, it is regarding the graph also, what kind of graph. Now this is my final slide, then I will take some question. You have to perform, these are the tips, very important tips for research pattern in scientific research. Perform a systematic literature review to increase knowledge on the topic, and you can refine your research question. Seek careful inputs from the experts. We generally say, my mentor says, if you really want a critic on your topic which you are working on, give it to your enemy. They will criticize it and you will get more information as compared to your friend. So seek careful input from the experts. Use the Finer and Picot's criteria for development of the research questions. Define objective carefully, as I told you that you have to use action verbs, not use to study and to understand. These are the very broad, and your project proposal, grant proposal can be rejected. You have to define variable with the measurement scale. As I told you, if you have smoking, how you are going to measure it? It is a categorical variable or continuous variable. Let's say hypertension. Okay, so for hypertension, I am having one variable, but I am going to calculate it through systolic blood pressure or diastolic blood pressure, or it is just only yes and no. How I am going to get this data? Okay, elaborate data management, and I am really forcing this particular thing. Now start writing one paragraph about data management plan in your research project proposal or thesis or PhD thesis, that how you are going to collect data through this questionnaire or through this lab. This will be my collecting form. Then I'm going to enter this into the Excel. What will be the data cleaning method? How we are going to, what are the methods when we are handling missing data? If we have some missing, whether we will remove or we will use some missing data techniques to fulfill it. And these are the information which is very important, and people are looking for that you are good scientist and you are writing in detail everything, and your grant application success chances will be low. And last not the least, you have to write limitation of this study. If you have, everybody has some limitation doing research. If you are highlighting that, that means you are specific to the particular time point. Why we are not able to this? Because these are the limitations of it. And this is my favorite line: involve statistician from the beginning of your research, not only when you have collected data and for analysis, because we can add fresh perspective in your research. Okay, not at the end, from the beginning. Okay, thank you. I will take few questions now.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. Very well explained lecture. Now I will have some questions. First question by this Mehjman Firdosh. What is the difference between longitudinal and cross-sectional study, and which study we can use in doing PhD work?
As I told you, that longitudinal and cross-sectional study, there is a time point. Cross-sectional studies are the survey, one time point survey. You are going and collecting information. Generally in PhD, because you have a minimum 3 years time to conduct your research, longitudinal studies can be done, but it has to be properly defined. You know what, at what baseline point you are starting. So for longitudinal studies, you have to have baseline information, and then after your 2 years and 3 years, what you are going to achieve, or in between you are taking some observation. So I think in PhD, if you are starting, just only starting, you can think of longitudinal studies.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, another question by Dr. Anita Anketa Tandon. Please explain with more examples to understand randomization and random sampling for taking up social studies researchers.
Okay, so for social studies, randomization is not at all applicable. So you don't have to think of the randomization. Randomization means assigning something. Let's say I have already 10 subjects in my in my contact. Then I am saying 5 of them I will give Ayurvedic medicine, and 5 I will give something. I will intervene in them. Okay, so it is related with the intervention. You are giving some intervention. So randomization, if you are a social scientist, it is not a cup of like tea of your research area. But social sciences, sampling is very important, very important. And there are 2 types of probability sampling: non-probability sampling and probability sampling. Now again, it comes under probability sampling: simple random sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, probability proportional to sampling. It depends on your research question, what has to be applied to your research. Okay, so simple random sampling has to be applied when you have sample size more than 1000. Okay, if you are willing that I will collect the information for more than 1000, because simple random sampling is applicable with the larger sample size. Rest other sample size you can apply stratified, cluster, and systematic sampling and other sampling which can be applied.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question from Professor Karishma Poplin. Is research question and posing argument is same?
Research question and pardon?
Posing argument.
No, there is a difference between these two. Research question is something like this is kind of your assumption, you know, what you are trying to say. An argument is different. Like, I have never used this term, but I think these two terms are different. Research question is different because there are some guidelines how to define. When we write some systematic reviews and all, we have to show them like how we have followed the guideline and defined this research question.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Another question by Dr. Sandeep Gupta. How do we perform a sensitivity analysis for an unknown model with a small sample size?
Okay, with the small sample size and sensitivity analysis, you know, you have to assume based on some pilot study, you have to assume some gold standard reference group, you know. Otherwise, sensitivity analysis, you have to have the four thing, you know, true positive and true negative and false positive and false negative. You have to have these things. So sensitivity analysis can be applied only when you have some reference group. So if you have very small sample size only, also you have to have some you know, pilot study. Based on this, you are saying that okay, if this will be the criteria, I will say yes or no based on the patient observation or maybe something else. But there has, for sensitivity analysis, reference group has to be there.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next question by Ms. Pragati. Ma'am, in social sciences, there exists a technique called a convenience sampling technique. Why convenience sampling technique is underrated?
Because of huge bias is involved in it. You know, when you are conducting any research, huge bias you can take. Because, you know, if I am doing some study, let's say I have done a research on breast cancer, female. Okay. So what I can do, I have to do some research on breast cancer patient and non-breast cancer patient, just to compare that what happened in the past, so that these ladies got the breast cancer, these are not. So if I will do the convenience sampling, I will be restricted to the one community, and I will not be generalizing this to the whole population that this is the cause. Like when I did the literature search, you know, what I have got, even dietary pattern, vegetarian, non-vegetarian people have said that because these are the diets are also causing the breast cancer. But when I did in my community in India, because we have variety of people here, vegetarian, non-vegetarian, and mockatarians, you know, I mean, sometimes people take. So this has not come as an important factor. This is not at all. So it depends. So that's how convenience sampling is not rated as a or it is down rated because of huge bias. But sometimes, you know, it is not feasible to do this if you are doing, just like I told you this for COVID-19. Convenience sampling is the only, you can easily, if you have some patient nearby you and you know them, they have gone through this disease, you can call them and ask, this is your convenience sampling, and that is will be an important data nowadays. So which will give some information. You are generating hypothesis through collecting convenience sampling data, so that other people can do the later second step research through the random sampling.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Another question by Dr. Meenu Sharma. I am doing a study on parenting style on aggression of children and taking social support as mediating factor. Can you please help me? Which sample method would be most appropriate and what kind of quantitative and qualitative data can be taken? Can purposive sampling will be appropriate?
No, I don't think that I have to understand your project in more detail to answer this question. But whatever I have understood from this, what I can suggest, stratified sampling will be helpful, because you can stratify it through educated, non-educated, social income group versus something, you know, population. That is a very important factor in, you know, or the people having stress or not having some stress, kind of. Stratified sampling will be better for your research, and you can involve both quantitative and qualitative variable, because this is a kind of survey where both the variable has to be there.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question by Dr. Anita. What would be the best method to study economic impact of COVID-19? What would be sample size?
Sample size, I think we cannot calculate at that point because sample size needs some information, some references, some studies has to be. So what we generally say is large sample size, and it is more than 50, it will be okay for now because we are starting on this study. Okay, there are not much study. Now economic impact, to assess the economic impact, you have to segregate different population, like higher end populations, lower end populations. So socioeconomic factor is very important. You have to divide. You cannot say that I will ask 50 patient, I can ask the Dabur CEO and I will ask the rickshaw wala. So you have to define, go to the very specific topic whom you are focusing on. You are just focusing on the labor community, you are focusing on the workers or service criteria people or something. So you have to be very focused.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question by Miss Anisa Farooq. What is the difference between research paper and research article?
Research paper and research articles are the synonyms. They are just used in a different exchange way. Research paper, research article, research manuscript. These are the same way they are used.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Next question by Dr. Sonika. Most of the time, we are not able to find the statistical analysis what to apply in particular research. As laymen give some easier way to find which test is suitable and how to select variables.
Okay, so this is, I will give simple, these type of workshops are going to conduct where you can get some understanding at least to like how or what techniques we are using, because if or behind each and every statistical method, there are a lot of assumptions which has to be gone through the data has to gone through past this, जैसे वो होता है ना Lakshman Rekha, sorry, that you have to gone through the Agni Pariksha. So that data has to pass, and then you can select that this is the method. And that's how statisticians are there. You have to consult a good statistician, or you can develop this skill. This is not restricted to the statistician. I'm telling you because I am reading many books which is written by the doctors very well. Statisticians, statistics book. So you can get the understanding, but you have to continue attending this kind of webinars and workshops to get more understanding.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, this is the last question. Kindly explain about case study and systematic review and meta-analysis.
Okay, so the case study is just depend, it depends on the one patient, one subject. You are talking about the one subject. Okay, you're describing one patient, each and everything, how he's feeling, what symptoms he has got. So it is all about the one. Now systematic review is like you are combining already published results. Let's say a person has done clinical trial in with the same drug in India, in China and America. Now they are giving some different results. Let's say India and China are rejecting that drug, and US saying it is very good. Now you have to combine, you have to do the literature search to give the recommendation whether it is really helpful for the patient. You have to find out all studies published on this particular drug and combine the, extract the data, what they have said. And there's another analysis of these published data, which is called as meta-analysis. And that can give you some conclusion, okay, whether it is applicable or it is still in conclusion. More studies has to be done in different areas.
Thank you, ma'am. Just now I got one more question by Ms. Nandini Sharma. What is the best way to choose research problem topic and how to write an effective research proposal? Guide briefly. I think you have done.
I think this is, I have already, this
Yeah,
my
already
topic
done,
was
yeah.
on this.
Yeah, it was
The
on
whole
this, yeah,
topic was on it. So I
yeah.
think if this is the recorded session, you
Yeah,
can forward this and she can get the answer of it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your valuable time and sharing your knowledge with us. Lecture was very informative and insightful, and we have learned a lot from this lecture. We
Thank
hope
you.
that the session will turn out to extremely useful for teachers as well as research scholars. Thank you, ma'am, so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.